My family spent years treating my husband like he was embarrassing, not because he was cruel, not because he was lazy, because he was a plumber. My mother used to introduce him like this. This is Autumn's husband. He does repair work. Repair work, like saying the actual word would lower the value of the room. For years, they laughed at his old truck, mocked his rough hands, called his red toolbox junk. Then one winter night, a pipe burst inside my parents' walls. Water flooded the house, the ceilings cracked, the contractor disappeared. And at 4:52 in the morning, headlights hit the driveway. My husband stepped out carrying that same red toolbox, the one everybody used to laugh at. My name is Autumn Whitaker. I'm 32 years old. And that was the night my family realized the man they called trash was the only thing holding their house together. My husband's name is Caleb Foster, but my family almost never used it. To them, he was the maintenance guy, the repairman, your worker husband, always said casually, always disguised as humor, and somehow that made it worse, because people can deny cruelty when they're smiling. Caleb had this old red toolbox he carried everywhere, scratched paint, bent metal corners, oil stains near the handle. He bought it when he was 19. And even after his business grew, he refused to replace it. My mother hated that toolbox. Every holiday she'd whisper, "Can he leave that thing outside?" Like it contaminated the room. At family dinners, they never seated Caleb near the center, always near the kitchen, near the hallway, near the back door. At first, I thought I was imagining it. But after enough years, patterns stopped feeling accidental. Every Christmas, my brother Mason got expensive electronics. My sister-in-law Vivian got jewelry. And Caleb? Hardware store gift cards. Everybody laughed. My mother would say, "At least we know he'll actually use it." And Caleb would smile politely, thank them, act grateful. While I sat there wondering how long a person can swallow disrespect before it changes them. The strange thing? My family secretly depended on him constantly. Leaking sinks, broken heaters, pipe pressure problems. Every single time, they called Caleb, not plumbers. Caleb. And every single time, he showed up. If you've ever watched someone stay kind while people treated them like they mattered less, you know how painful quiet respect can feel. For 3 winters, Caleb fixed my parents' heating pipes for free. Free. Never charged them once. Then one afternoon, I overheard my mother telling neighbors, "We eventually hired a real professional." A real professional. Like my husband was pretending. That sentence stayed with me for years. The worst part? Caleb never defended himself. Never argued. Never corrected people. He'd just wipe his hands slowly, smile once, and move on. But after enough years together, you start hearing the hurt people never say out loud. One afternoon, my father opened his wallet at lunch and tucked behind old receipts. I saw something strange. One of Caleb's business cards, bent at the edges, clearly carried around for years. The second he noticed me looking, he closed the wallet immediately. Then my brother Mason convinced my parents to renovate the house. Luxury remodel, open concept kitchen, imported hardwood floors, custom lighting, and instead of hiring experienced contractors, he hired one of his wealthy friends trying to start a construction company. That's when Caleb got unusually quiet. One evening, Caleb walked slowly through the unfinished house, checking walls, listening to pipes, watching connections. Then finally, He looked at my father and said, "The plumbing behind these walls is failing." Mason laughed immediately. "Stick to unclogging toilets." My mother smiled awkwardly. Vivian rolled her eyes. "And Caleb?" He didn't argue. He just picked up his red toolbox, looked back at the walls one last time, and quietly said, "If these pipes burst during winter, this whole house is going under." My family thought my husband was jealous because nobody respected him. They didn't realize he was the only person in the room who knew their house was about to fail. A week after the renovation, my father showed up at Caleb's workshop. Didn't call first, didn't tell anyone. He just stood there awkwardly, surrounded by pipes, tools, and half-finished repair jobs. Then quietly asked, "If something happened to the house, could you fix it?" Caleb looked surprised for a second, then simply said, "Of course." No attitude, no resentment, just honesty. And somehow, that made my father look even guiltier. I had only been to Caleb's workshop a few times, but standing there that day, I noticed things differently. Thank you cards taped near the shelves, photos from local businesses, church repair invoices marked paid, then crossed out with handwritten notes. No charge. That's when I realized something strange. The town respected my husband more than my family ever did. At dinner that weekend, my brother Mason started joking about the renovation costs, designer counters, imported floors, luxury appliances. Then he smirked at Caleb and said, "You probably make more money unclogging toilets during holidays than I do in finance." Everybody laughed lightly, except my father. Again. I noticed that too. That night, Caleb woke up suddenly, 3:14 a.m., completely still, listening. Then he sat upright slowly. "Did you hear that?" I listened carefully. At first, nothing. Then faintly, a deep knocking sound, far away, inside walls. Caleb closed his eyes immediately, and I knew he already understood what it meant. The next morning, Caleb called my father, told him carefully, "You need someone to check the pressure system immediately." My father sounded nervous, but before he could answer, Mason grabbed the phone. The contractor already handled it. Caleb went quiet, then calmly said, "No, he didn't." Mason hung up anyway. If somebody who truly understands danger warns you quietly, listen carefully, because calm people usually don't speak unless it matters. 3 days later, the winter storm hit. Hard. Freezing rain. Ice-covered roads. Power flickers all night. And suddenly, everybody started texting the family group chat. My mother, "The upstairs heat feels strange." My father, "Water pressure dropped." Mason still acted confident. "It's fine." But Caleb? He didn't respond at all. At 3:14 in the morning, my phone rang, my mother screaming, not talking, screaming. I could hear alarms in the background, water, glass breaking. Then my father grabbed the phone and shouted, "The ceiling split open!" And suddenly, I remembered Caleb hearing that pipe knock days earlier. By the time we got there, the house was chaos, water pouring through ceiling lights, hardwood floors buckling upward, kitchen cabinets soaked, alarm systems sparking near the hallway, my mother carrying dripping photo albums through freezing water, and Mason screaming at the insurance hotline in the middle of the living room. That's when the real panic started. The contractor stopped answering calls. Insurance denied immediate emergency coverage because of unlicensed plumbing modifications. Everything started collapsing fast. And for the first time, my family looked completely helpless. Not rich, not polished, not impressive, just scared. Then something happened I'll never forget. One of the neighbors walked into the flooded kitchen and said, "Did somebody call Caleb?" Another neighbor immediately added, "He saved our basement during last year's freeze." Then another voice, "He fixed the church heating system on Christmas Eve." And slowly, my family started realizing something terrifying. Outside this house, everybody already knew my husband mattered. My family spent years treating Caleb like he was beneath them, but standing in freezing water at 4 a.m, his was the only name anybody trusted. The storm got worse by the minute, water everywhere, lights flickering, frozen wind pushing through broken seals, and then, at exactly 4:52 in the morning, headlights appeared through the snow. Everybody turned toward the driveway at once, and slowly, Caleb's old truck pulled in. He stepped out quietly, heavy boots in slush, snow collecting on his jacket, and in his hand, the red toolbox. The same one my mother called embarrassing. The same one Mason joked belonged in a junkyard. Funny how fast objects stop looking ridiculous when they're the only thing that can save you. I expected anger. Honestly, part of me expected Caleb to stay cold, maybe even refuse. But he didn't. No speech, no smug smile, no revenge. He walked straight past everybody, into freezing water, and immediately started working. That silence hit harder than any insult my family ever gave him. The damage wasn't surface level. That's what Caleb realized immediately. The burst pipe inside the wall had been leaking pressure for days. Water spread behind insulation. Electrical lines got soaked. Parts of the ceiling were already sagging dangerously. And when Caleb saw the kitchen wall, his expression changed instantly. My mother stood there shaking, holding wet photo albums against her chest, watching Caleb work knee-deep in freezing water. Then quietly, almost like she didn't mean to say it out loud, she whispered, "He actually came." That line broke something inside me, because deep down, they expected resentment from him. And somehow, he still showed up anyway. A person's character becomes obvious when they help people who never treated them kindly, and Caleb never stopped helping. Mason completely unraveled, shouting at insurance agents, calling contractors repeatedly, trying to sound important, trying to regain control. But panic makes loud people louder, and Caleb, quieter, focused, precise, calm. And suddenly, everybody in the house started listening to him instead. Neighbors kept arriving, flashlights, generators, space heaters, and every single person who walked in recognized Caleb immediately. "Thank God you're here. He saved our pipes last winter. He kept the church open during Christmas freeze." And slowly, my family realized something humiliating. The town respected my husband more than they ever had. My father stood beside Caleb quietly while he worked, watching water drain from broken pipes, watching him rebuild connections by hand. Then finally, he said something soft, almost to himself. Funny how the dirtiest hands ended up saving everything. Nobody laughed this time. That's when my mother noticed something inside the toolbox lid. Small handwritten notes, pipe maps, emergency shutoff locations, maintenance dates. She looked confused, then slowly asked, "Why do you have all this?" Caleb didn't even stop working. "Because your system's been unstable for years." My stomach dropped, because suddenly, I understood something horrifying. He had been quietly protecting this house the entire time. My mother sat down slowly in the middle of the flooded kitchen, completely silent, because for years, they mocked his truck, mocked his hands, mocked his toolbox. While all along, the only reason this house survived as long as it did was because Caleb kept fixing problems nobody else even noticed. And standing there, watching him hold the entire house together while water soaked through his clothes, I realized something painful. My family spent years confusing appearance with value, and now, their entire world was collapsing around the one man they called trash. They spent years trying to make my husband feel small, but in the middle of that flooded house, he became the calmest, strongest person in the room. By sunrise, the water still hadn't fully stopped. Parts of the ceiling kept dripping steadily. The hardwood floors had started lifting completely, and every few minutes, another section of the house made a cracking sound. Pause. The kind that makes everybody stop breathing for a second. Because suddenly, this wasn't expensive damage anymore. It was structural. Nobody questioned Caleb anymore. Not my brother, not my mother, not even the contractor on speakerphone. Caleb walked room to room calmly, shutting valves, opening walls, checking pressure points, and everybody followed his instructions immediately. Funny how quickly respect appears when survival depends on somebody. While Caleb worked, one of the neighbors said something strange to me quietly. "Your father recommended Caleb to us years ago." I froze. "What?" The neighbor nodded. "He gave us his business card after our basement flooded." And suddenly, all those old business cards in my father's wallet made sense. I confronted my father carefully. "You recommended him to people?" He looked embarrassed immediately, then quietly admitted, "Because he's the best plumber I know." That answer hurt more than I expected, because it meant something painful. My father respected Caleb privately, while letting everybody disrespect him publicly. That realization stayed inside me all morning, because silence protects the wrong people. My father never insulted Caleb himself, but he never stopped anybody else either. And honestly, sometimes quiet betrayal hurts worse than open cruelty. Respect that only exists in private isn't really respect at all. Not when somebody still stands alone publicly. Mason kept trying to fix everything with money, more phone calls, more threats, more panic. Then finally, the insurance representative said something that shut the entire room down. "Sir, these renovations violated emergency plumbing codes." Silence. "Your claim is suspended pending investigation." Mason looked completely lost, because for the first time in his life, money couldn't solve the problem fast enough. My mother sat wrapped in blankets near the staircase, quiet, watching Caleb move through freezing water for hours. And I noticed something strange. She stopped looking embarrassed by him. She started looking ashamed of herself. That afternoon, my father finally told the story. Years ago, the church heating system failed during a Christmas freeze. One day before service, nobody could fix it in time. Then Caleb showed up, worked overnight, fixed everything, and refused payment. My father looked at him quietly and said, "I never forgot that." And honestly, neither did Caleb. Mason finally snapped, "We'll pay you for all this." The room went silent immediately, because everybody knew that sentence wasn't gratitude, it was ego trying to survive. Caleb didn't even look up from the pipe he was repairing. He simply said, "This isn't about money." And somehow, that embarrassed Mason more than yelling ever could. By evening, the flooding finally slowed. The house still looked destroyed. Wet walls, collapsed ceiling sections, buckets everywhere. But the panic was gone, because Caleb removed it from the room. Not with speeches, not with revenge, with competence. And standing there watching him quietly rebuild what everybody else failed to protect. My family finally understood something they should have learned years ago. Dignity doesn't come from appearances. It comes from who people become when everything falls apart. For years, my family looked at my husband and saw dirt under his nails. They never noticed. He was the only thing holding their house together. By the second night, the house finally grew quiet. No alarms, no rushing water, no ceilings cracking, just dripping sounds echoing through damaged rooms. And in the middle of all that destruction, Caleb was still working, exhausted, soaked, freezing cold, but still working. While everybody else stood around trying to process what happened, he was the one holding everything together. My mother stared at the red toolbox for a long time that night. Not with embarrassment anymore, not annoyance, almost guilt. Because suddenly, that old scratch toolbox didn't look cheap. It looked dependable, like every dent on it meant somebody got helped somewhere. While Caleb stepped outside briefly, my mother opened the toolbox carefully. Inside the lid were handwritten notes, emergency valve locations, pipe pressure records, maintenance reminders, and then the oldest note, dated almost 7 years earlier. Check Whitaker House before first freeze. My mother looked stunned, because that meant one thing: Caleb had been protecting this house quietly for years. My father sat heavily near the damaged kitchen wall, then quietly said, "He's been fixing problems here before they became disasters." Nobody spoke, so he continued. Most winters, this house would have flooded already without him. That sentence hit my mother hard, because suddenly, all the years of mocking him looked uglier in hindsight. My brother Mason finally stopped pretending everything was fine. No jokes, no arrogance, no corporate confidence, just panic and exhaustion. He looked around the destroyed living room and whispered, "I thought hiring expensive people meant quality." Caleb glanced at him calmly and replied, "Expensive and capable aren't always the same thing." Nobody argued with him this time. The people who look the most important in good times aren't always the people you need when everything collapses. Caleb proved that. That night, neighbors kept stopping by, bringing coffee, blankets, generators, and every single person greeted Caleb first. Not my father, not Mason. Caleb. One older man even shook his hand and said, "This town trusts you more than most contractors." And watching my family hear that out loud felt strangely emotional. My mother finally walked toward Caleb slowly, still holding one of the soaked photo albums. Then quietly, almost painfully, she said, "I was wrong about you." The room went completely silent, because my mother almost never apologized, especially not sincerely. Caleb looked at her for a long moment, then simply said, "I know." Not cruel, not smug, just honest. And somehow, that response carried more dignity than anger ever could. A few days later, my father cleaned out part of the garage, then hung something on the bulletin board beside his workbench. Caleb's business card, right in the center, visible, public. No hiding it inside wallets anymore, no secret respect. For the first time, he acknowledged Caleb openly. After the cleanup finally ended, I stood outside watching Caleb load the red toolbox back into his truck. Snow melting slowly around the driveway. The same driveway where my family once laughed at him. And suddenly, everything felt different. Not because the house got saved, because the illusion finally broke. My family spent years measuring people by appearance, titles, money, clean hands. But when the walls split open and water destroyed everything, none of those things mattered. Only one thing did. Who stayed calm when everybody else fell apart? And for years, my family looked at my husband and saw dirt under his nails. They never noticed. He was the only thing holding their house together. They mocked the man with the toolbox for years, until disaster revealed he was the only real professional in the room.